When success got too heavy, sometimes silence is the loudest sound. I didn't realize it not while the emails poured in, the goals were met, and people smiled and called me a role model. I only heard the sound of the keyboard, the click of the coffee mug on the desk, the hum of the computer that never rested. Deep down, I never rested either. In the last few years, I'd achieved everything I'd ever dreamed of. The office overlooking the city, the busy schedule, the messages telling me how much I inspired other women. On the outside, success. On the inside, a restlessness I couldn't name. A tiredness that wouldn't go away even after sleep. But sleep was already rare. My body was starting to negotiate with me in small ways, a tight shoulder, a queasy stomach, a racing heart for no reason. I called it normal anxiety. After all, who doesn't feel that these days? I told myself it was the price of success. Screen text. She seemed to have it all. But her body knew something was wrong. The problem is that when you're surrounded by goals, no one teaches you to listen to your body. Everyone talks about productivity, but no one talks about the emptiness that comes when you do too much. I became good at hiding it. I put makeup on the tiredness, a smile on the exhaustion, and a new goal on every failure. My life became a sequence of tasks that seemed to protect me from what I feared most, quitting. Because quitting was the same as failing. Visual cut. Slow motion. Her looking at her laptop screen, the blue light reflects in her tired eyes. I remember the morning I realized something was wrong. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, the laptop still open, notifications flashing on the screen. My body was stiff, my head ached, and I felt a strange weight on my chest, as if someone had placed a stone inside me. Still, I got up. I had coffee. I sat down. I kept going. Because that's what you do when the whole world expects you not to stop. And it was there, in that repeated gesture, that I slowly began to fade away. Screen text. Success has started to cost too much. People said I was strong. I said everything was fine. But the truth is, at night, when my phone stopped vibrating, I felt afraid. Afraid of not keeping up, afraid of disappointing, afraid of being forgotten. And this fear made me work more, sleep less, pretend better. Once, my mother called me and said, "You look tired, daughter." I replied, laughing, "It's just a phase." But what I didn't say is that this phase had been going on for years. Ambient sound, heavy breathing, close-up of trembling hands holding a coffee mug. My body already knew I was going too far. I just didn't know how to listen. If this story is touching you, comment below from where you're watching and what time it is there, ... double quotes. Looking back, I realized that the beginning of my collapse wasn't a single event. There wasn't a specific day. It was a sum of silences, of small ignorances, of promises made to exhaustion. An accumulated fatigue that hid under the word success. Back then, I thought that achieving everything meant not being able to lose anything, not a minute, not a goal, not a chance. Today, I know that losing my balance was the highest price I've ever paid. Screen text. She achieved everything and began to lose herself. But I still didn't know how much longer my body could take. I still believed I could push a little further, deliver one more project, sleep a little less, run a little more. And it was in this belief that I could do anything that my body began to give up. Slowly, silently. The hours that no one saw pass. The days began to blend together. Sometimes I woke up thinking it was still yesterday. Other times, I didn't even know if I slept yet. Time stopped being a straight line and became a tangle of hours, all the same, all urgent. Screen text. She was always running, but where to? I worked in the same corner of the house, a chair that already molded my body. Sometimes the sun would stream through the window and I wouldn't even notice. Other times, the day would end and I was still there responding, planning, adjusting. Coffee was both fuel and a reason for pause. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't hungry. Just a hollow feeling in my stomach that felt like anxiety and exhaustion at the same time. I began to measure my worth by the number of notifications on my phone. Each message was a reminder that I was still needed, that I hadn't disappeared yet. Ambient sound, keyboard taps, notifications, shallow breathing. People complimented me. "You're tireless," they'd say. And I smile as if it were a compliment. But being tireless is the same as not being human. And I didn't realize I was becoming a machine. My body was giving me signs. My vision would blur in the middle of the afternoon. My hands would tingle. My chest would tighten. I told myself, it's just stress. Funny how just becomes a disguise for everything that hurts. One night, while writing a report, I noticed something strange. My fingers trembled on the keyboard. The text on the screen seemed to blur, as if I were in a dream. I blinked several times. Nothing. It was as if my body was screaming silently, and I simply turned down the volume. Text on screen. She began to confuse focus with escape. The routine repeated itself with cruel perfection. Waking up, opening the laptop, responding to messages, reviewing deliverables, feigning control. Sometimes, in the middle of a meeting, I forget what I was going to say. Silence. A second of emptiness. Then I smile and move on, because no one could tell. And the more I tried to keep up the pace, the more my body secretly punished me. A migraine that wouldn't go away. An unexplained nausea. My heart racing out of nowhere as if I'd run a marathon. But I was sitting down. Visual cut. Close-up of a cup of cold coffee. Clock showing 3:17 a.m. I said I loved what I did, and it was true. But loving something doesn't protect you from getting sick because of it. I was drowning in something I called passion. My mind was still working. My body was already beginning to fail. It was a silent divorce between what I wanted to do and what I could still endure. One day, during an important meeting, I felt a loud ringing in my ear. The sound grew distant, as if the entire world had been muffled. I kept talking. I kept smiling. I continued existing as an automatic version of myself. On-screen text. She didn't see the time pass. Her body did. Night fell, and the clock read almost 4 in the morning. I was still there, trying to finish what no one demanded, the perfection that only I demanded. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize my face. Deep dark circles, red eyes, a vacant expression. The woman in the reflection seemed tired of trying to be someone. It was then that I understood that time wasn't passing, it was me. Slowly, invisibly. But even so, the next day I got up. I put on the same clothes, sat in the same chair, and opened the same screen. Because deep down, I still believed that if I stopped, the world would stop with it. Text on screen. The clock marked hours. The body marked limits. The body speaks, the mind ignores, the pains began small, almost discreet, like someone asking permission to exist. First, a stiffness in my back, then a tingling in my hands, a slight pressure in my head. I told myself it was my posture, that all I had to do was stretch, take a pain reliever, take a deep breath, and I'd get back to work. Text on screen. She called the alerts distractions. Over time, my body became more insistent. I felt tired all the time, as if sleep never fully belonged to me. Sometimes my heart beat fast even when I was still. Other times, it seemed to forget to beat. I placed my hand on my chest, trying to find a rhythm that reminded me I was still alive. But instead of listening, I negotiated. Just one more delivery. After the launch. After the month ends. It was always later. As if my body had a pause button I could press until everything was done. Ambient sound. Shallow breathing, rapid typing. Overlapping notifications. I reached a point where I began to measure my strength by my ability to keep going despite the pain. With each new sleepless night, I convinced myself that this was focus, that discomfort was the price of success. And success at that point was more of an anesthetic than a reward. People would say, "You're an inspiration," and I would smile, hiding the dark circles under my eyes in the cold light of the computer. One late afternoon, I remember feeling something different. A slight dizziness accompanied by a sudden heat. The air felt thick. the ground distant. I braced my hands on the table, trying not to fall. Breathe, I thought. It's just stress. Just stress. 2 words that disguise almost any kind of breakdown. Screen text. The body backed. The mind made spreadsheets. Even so, I sat back down. I opened a new tab, started reviewing a contract. My hands trembled on the keyboard, but habit was stronger. The body wanted to stop. The mind wanted to surrender. It's strange how the mind learns to rationalize even its own suffering. I said I was used to it, as if fatigue were a language learned over time. And then insomnia set in. I lay down and listened to the sound of my own heart beating too fast. It was as if my body was afraid to fall asleep. Sometimes I closed my eyes and imagined I wouldn't wake up. Other times, I was afraid I'd wake up and have to start all over again. Cut. The camera slowly pans around her lying down, eyes open in the dark. The next morning was always the same. Coffee, screen, spreadsheets, goals, an automatic smile. And inside me, something began to break. My memory was failing. I forgot simple appointments, names, passwords. Once, I stared at my phone in my hand, unable to remember why I'd picked it up. I felt scared, but instead of stopping, I started a new project. The mind creates tricks to keep pretending everything is fine. One day, during a live stream with clients, my voice failed. Literally, the words came out scratchy, the air running out before the sentence was finished. I smiled, apologized, drank water, and continued. Inside, I felt like I was falling apart. Screen text. She called pain efficiency. And it was that same day that I realized how much I had unlearned how to feel. I no longer knew what hunger was, what sleep was, what joy was. I only knew how to comply. At the end of the night, I sat on the bathroom floor. My head rested on my knees. My body trembled, my breath shallow. I thought about crying, but I didn't even have the strength. It was as if my body was trying to scream what my mind refused to hear. Fatigue became language, and the interpreter changes from myself. Ambient sound, racing heart, then total silence. The truth is, the body does speak. It always has. It speaks in the form of pain, insomnia, tightness. We call this normal life. And when the mind ignores it, the body learns to scream louder. The invisible line of collapse. There was no explosion, no scream, no drama. Just a silence so dense it seemed to swallow the air. I woke up on a random day, one of those days when the alarm clock rings and the body gets up before the mind even realizes it's awake, and realized something was different. My legs were shaking. My hands were cold. The air felt heavier than usual. On-screen text. The body decides to stop when the mind won't allow it. I tried to put my feet on the floor, but the world spun. My vision darkened for a moment. I thought just hypoglycemia. A coffee will do it. I walked to the kitchen, each step as if I were walking on the floor of a storm-tossed ship. The smell of coffee that had once awakened me now sickened me. I felt my heart pounding, a loud, irregular beat, as if it had forgotten its rhythm. I sat on the kitchen floor. For the first time in a long time, I didn't want to get up. I felt trapped in a body that no longer obeyed me. I looked at the clock. It was 8:14 a.m. I had a meeting at 8:30 a.m. And yet, as I sat there, my body begging me to stop, my first thought was, they'll notice I missed it. Ambient sound, shaky breathing, distant sound of phone notifications ringing without response. The body has a cruel way of protecting us. When it senses you won't stop of your own free will, it shuts down. And that's what happened. I don't remember falling. I only remember the dull sound of something hitting, perhaps my own body hitting the floor, and then darkness. When I opened my eyes, there was a white light. The noise of machines, hurried footsteps, voices that didn't recognize me. A monitor beeped at a rhythm my heart could no longer maintain on its own. Screen text. She woke up, but her body was still asleep. A doctor asked me how long it had been since I slept properly. I tried to answer, but I couldn't remember. The numbers jumbled in my mind, maybe months, maybe years. He looked at me with that look that blends empathy with diagnosis and said, "Your body has entered systemic exhaustion. You need to stop." It would have seemed simple if stopping didn't feel like failure. Lying in that bed, with wires attached to my chest and the cold hospital light casting shadows on the ceiling, I realized how strange it was to be alive and yet not feel like I was. The silence of the room forced me to listen to everything I'd been avoiding: my shallow breathing, my hesitant heart, the fear of admitting I'd failed. But I hadn't failed. I'd existed too much. Visual cut. Slow motion drops of serum running down the tube. Her reflection in the window, her eyes open, empty. I received messages on my cell phone, which vibrated beside my bed. Work notifications, clients, compliments, requests. I wanted to respond. The instinct was automatic, but my arm didn't move. That's when I understood. My body had shut me down to save me from myself. Screen text. Sometimes, collapse is the only cry for help the body knows how to make. The following days were slow. Every breath felt like a learning experience. Every small movement, getting up, walking, showering, was a challenge. The doctor told me that burnout isn't just fatigue. It's when your body stops believing in you. And that hurt more than any physical pain. There, alone, with the constant sound of machines all around, I realized the invisible line I had crossed without realizing it. The one that separates discipline from self-destruction. The success of emptying, the pride of surrender. I crossed that line in silence, believing it was strength. Ambient sound, slow heartbeat, the sound of the hospital air conditioning, her voiceover. When my body stopped, all that remained was the truth I'd hidden even from myself. I didn't want to win. I just wanted to rest. And it was there, on the cold floor of my collapse, that, unbeknownst to me, my awakening began. The silence that screamed for me, "The hospital has a sound that hurts." It's not the sound of machines, nor the murmur of the hallways. It's the sound of silence. That silence that forces you to hear everything you've tried to silence for years. Screen text. She didn't fall. She was forced to stop. The following days were slow, almost suspended in time. I stared at the white ceiling and tried to remember how I got there. Every wire connected to my body felt like a confession. Every whistle, a sentence I'd never said out loud. At first, I felt angry. Angry at myself for not having held on. Angry at my body for betraying me. Anger at needing help. But my body didn't betray me, it saved me. While the doctors talked about tests and recovery, a kind of silence was born inside me that wasn't an absence of sound, it was a presence. The presence of everything I'd ignored. The fear, the guilt, the emptiness. Ambient sound, regular heartbeat, calm breathing. My mother came to visit me. She held my hand and said, "I knew you'd stop eventually." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were a mirror. I saw in it every time she tried to warn me and I hadn't listened. I cried for the first time in a long time. But it was a different kind of cry, no desperation, no urgency. It was a cleansing cry. My body releasing what was trapped between muscles and goals. Screen text. Sometimes, the body speaks by crying. The hours in the hospital taught me what success never taught, that the world doesn't fall apart when you disappear for a few days. That no one dies because you slept. That things continue, even without you controlling everything. I began to look at myself with curiosity, not with pressure. I ran my fingers over the invisible scars, those left by time and silence, and realized there was a woman there, beneath the entrepreneur, a woman who breathed slowly, who wanted warm coffee, not cold, who wanted to lie down without guilt. Visual cut. Hospital window, gray light streaming in. She rests her forehead against the glass. A nurse asked if I needed anything. I replied, "I need silence." He smiled. He said, "It's the first request of someone who's coming back to themselves." My body was beginning to cooperate. My legs were shaking less. My head was aching less. But my heart was different. As if it had learned a new rhythm, slower, more present. At night, alone in my room, I closed my eyes and thought about the past few weeks. Of the deadlines I'd met while ignoring my own urgency. Of the goals I'd met while my body begged for a break. Of all the times I said, "It's okay," just to keep being admired. Screen text. She realized that living is harder than producing. The silence wasn't a threat now, it was medicine. For the first time, I felt my whole body breathing with me, as if we were making peace. I understood that my body had never given up on me. It just screamed louder when it realized I didn't know how to ask for help. The collapse wasn't a punishment. It was a call. And in that cold dawn, with the sound of the floor dripping and the monitor blinking, I promised myself one thing. I would never again call rest weakness. I would never again confuse pain with discipline. I would never again pretend that handling everything was synonymous with being well. Ambient sound, soft rain tapping on the window. Fade to black. The silence screamed for me. And I finally listened. What remains when everything stops returning home after the hospital was like waking up from a dream, except the dream was my old life. The same walls, the same computer, the same coffee mug on the table, but I wasn't the same anymore. On-screen text. She came back. But she wasn't the one who left. The silence in the house was deafening. Before, the sound of the keyboard filled everything. Now, that sound seemed too violent. I stared at the screen of the switched-off laptop and was afraid to turn it on, as if that simple gesture could pull me back into the abyss. I spent the first few days trying to figure out what to do with my time. The hours that had previously slipped away now seemed to be overflowing, and I didn't know how to inhabit them. Ambient sound, clock ticking seconds, calm breathing. At first, I tried to maintain my routine, waking up early, making lists, feeling productive. But my body reacted. My heart raced, my hands cold, my temples sweating. It was as if it were telling me, "Don't go back to where I lost you." I sat on the porch. The sun beat down slowly on my skin. The distant sound of the street seemed like another language. And I realized I no longer knew what it meant to simply ... exist. Screen text. When the body is silent, silence teaches. The days dragged on at first. I missed the goals, the messages, the sense of urgency. It was like withdrawal from the chaos. But little by little, I began to notice little things. The smell of freshly brewed coffee, the sound of rain on the window, the touch of the wind in my hair. Signs that there was still life, simple, light, human. My body was still tired, but it was no longer an enemy. It was a territory under reconstruction. I observed it like someone visiting an old house carefully, with respect. Ambient sound. Birds in the distance. The sound of wind in dry leaves. Sometimes my cell phone vibrated. Old coworkers asking if I was better. What a strange word. They meant ready to go back. But I didn't want to go back. I wanted to start. To start differently, without the rush of being admired. Without the guilt of being tired. Cut. Her walking around the house, her reflection in the switched-off laptop screen. In a new notebook, I wrote a phrase that stuck in my head. My body didn't give up on me. It forced me to find myself again. I read that phrase for days, trying to understand what it really meant. And I realized I didn't need to reinvent myself. I just needed to remember who I was before measuring myself by results. Text on screen. She began to listen to her body like someone listening to an old friend. Little by little, fear turned to respect. Routine, a space for choices. Time and a lie no longer an enemy. I started walking without headphones. No podcasts, no audio, no outside voices. Just the sound of my footsteps. And it was there, in that silence, that I understood what remained when everything stopped. Me. Not the entrepreneur. Not the inspiration. Just me with my limits, my breaths, my humanity. Ambient sound. Deep breathing. The gentle sound of the sea fading. The The computer is still on the desk, but now it sleeps more than I do. And that's okay. Learning to stay without producing anything stay. That word scared me. Staying still, being quiet, being alone. I'd always associated it with failure, stagnation, weakness. But now it was exactly what my body was asking for. Screen text. Staying is also a verb of courage. The first few days were a kind of withdrawal. The absence of tasks felt like a hole in my chest. My mind sought noise, anything to fill the silence. I picked up my phone, opened apps, updated emails no one had sent. But my body wisely refused to cooperate. My heart raced just hearing notifications. My hands sweated. And little by little, I began to understand. My body didn't want movement. It wanted space. Ambient sound. The distant sound of a city waking up. Cars in the distance. Birds between buildings. One morning, I decided not to open my laptop. Instead, I sat on the living room floor, leaned my back against the wall, and just breathed. The air came and went as if for the first time. The silence, once frightening, began to become companionship. I, who had always needed noise to feel alive, was learning to exist without doing. Screen text. She began to breathe. And that was enough. I began to notice small things. The morning light changing color on the wall, the sound of the kettle boiling, the smell of soap on my hands. Simple things, things that had always been there, but that I never took the time to notice. My body was slowly recovering. Sleep began to return not as an escape, but as a shelter. Dreams that had previously been about deadlines and goals now brought back childhood memories, running down the street, getting my feet wet in the rain, laughing for no reason. It was as if my body was returning forgotten pieces of myself. Ambient sound, calm breathing, the sound of light rain, a long sigh. One day, I received a job offer. A big project, the kind I would have accepted without thinking. But this time, I thought. I felt my body react, my stomach tightening, my chest tightening. It was the same old reflex, the fear of disappointment. But now I knew the cost of that fear. I calmly replied, "Thank you, but I can't right now." It was a short sentence, but within it lay a lifetime of learning. Learning to say no was the most beautiful way to say yes for me. On-screen text. Rejecting the world sometimes is embracing yourself. Over time, staying became synonymous with presence. Presence in every gesture, every breath, every small pleasure. I began writing not out of obligation, but out of desire. Not to deliver, but to remember. I wrote things like, "Today I didn't produce anything." And maybe that's why I feel whole. My body now wasn't asking me for goals. It was asking for breaks. It was asking for touch, laughter, fresh air. And I, for the first time, obeyed without guilt. Visual cut. Her walking barefoot through the house, the window open, the wind moving the curtains. I understood that productivity without presence is just a more beautiful kind of absence. And that rest isn't a lack of will, it's a way to stay alive. Staying, I discovered, is remaining in what is real. It's listening to your body and respecting the rhythm your mind has forgotten. Screen text. She learned to stay. And the world didn't end. Now, when the sun sets and the world seems rushed, I remember the hospital, the kitchen, the cold floor. And I'm grateful for having stopped. Because it was in the pause that I found myself. And it was by staying that I came back into existence. The body that stayed and saved me today. When I look back, I feel as if my life has been divided into two existences, before and after the body spoke. Before, I believed that success was resisting pain. Later, I understood that success is not needing it to feel alive. Screen text. She survived. But now she wants to live. The house is the same. The computer is still there. The coffee still exudes that familiar scent. But now, the sound of the keyboard isn't a sentence, it's a choice. I write slowly. The words no longer rush to meet goals, but to remind me where I came from. The body, it stayed, It stayed when I neglected it, when I called it weak, when I made it go through restless nights. It stayed when my mind said, just a little longer. It stayed even when hurt, even when tired. And in the end, it was the one who saved me. Ambient sound, heart beating in a calm rhythm, background of soft, distant wind. The marks still exist, dark circles, invisible scars, memories that sometimes hurt. But I learned to see them as reminders of survival, not failure. The body taught me to respect the signs before they become screams, to stop before collapsing, to breathe before deciding. Today, when someone asks me how I managed to come back, I smile and say, I didn't come back. I stayed. Screen text. She didn't start over. She stayed. I learned that there's a quiet strength in accepting one's own limits, and that the body is the first to know when something is wrong. The mind is the one that takes longer to admit it. If I had listened sooner, perhaps I could have avoided the breakdown. But perhaps the breakdown was the only language I could still understand. Now, when my heart races, I stop. When my body grows heavy, I rest. When silence arrives, I listen. And each time I do this, I feel my body thank me in its breath, in its lightness, in its presence. Visual cut. Her walking at dusk, the sky in shades of gray and pink, the wind moving her hair, a slight smile. Natural light. I discovered that the true achievement wasn't the work, nor the recognition, nor the strength. It was forgiveness. Forgiving my body for screaming. Forgiving my mind for not listening. Forgiving myself for confusing tiredness with purpose. Ambient sound. Sound of deep breathing, fade to absolute silence. Today, I wake up unhurriedly. I open the window, let the sun in. And, before anything else, I ask my body, what do you need today? Sometimes it responds with hunger, sometimes with sleep, sometimes with a desire to do nothing. And I listen, because I learned that listening to my body is the purest form of self-love. Screen text. The body stayed. And she finally understood why. Success still exists, but now it's different. Not what's measured in numbers, but what feels peaceful. Because the body that stayed was the same one that saved me. Today, I understand that the breakdown wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a different kind of life. A life where success is being able to sleep peacefully, where rest is resistance, and where the body is not an obstacle, but a compass. Screen text. How many times has your body tried to warn you? Maybe the question was never how much longer can I take, but rather, why do I keep trying when it already hurts? Most people only learn this when it's too late. I learned it lying on the kitchen floor, listening to my body tell me what my mind didn't want to accept, that there's no victory in getting there first if the price is losing yourself. So, if your body has been speaking, even if only in whispers, listen. Maybe it's just trying to save you.